All right, No Spot Motivation, episode 21. Perseverance wears the mask of failure first. Seems it's easy to get caught up in the struggle of success in our culture and society that the concept of failure along the way gets dismissed as failure, right? That it's unacceptable, essentially. But it's along the way that is where your strength is forged. Failure is forged in friction, not comfort. So we look at these ideas through the wrong lens, with the wrong reflection. I had a buddy tell me once, he was like, I always thought you'd be the most successful of our friends. I was like, well, define success. Is that who has the biggest bank account? I don't think so. I think that's, again, our culturally and societally defined measure of success. That's the metric of success. But that is not success. Success is in the perseverance that you continue through, right? So success is a sculpture carved with a dull chisel of repeated failures. They always have this, there's always this story you hear that's like, Michael Jordan got cut from the basketball team. No, he didn't. He got cut from varsity his freshman year. He's Michael fucking Jordan. He didn't get cut from a basketball team, but he did fail at making varsity as a freshman. Probably still their loss, but it fueled his growth. It's that idea where there's within failure, the shame is external, but the courage to continue and persevere is internal. It's the things you do when people aren't watching that are your continued growth and the mirror that you show to the world of who you are. There was this bodybuilder, Tom Platz, a big bodybuilder in the 80s, late 70s, 80s. Doesn't matter. He had a quote that said, "You have to achieve failure." Now he's talking about bodybuilding. But if you restructure that, reframe it into the idea, it's an achievement to fail because you dared. You took a step that other people haven't. They sat complacent and content in mediocrity, most likely, which is fine. It's a simpler way to go through life if that's all you're trying to achieve. If you don't have bountiful goals, particularly materialistic goals, you're going to find more success in your reality because it's tangible. It's accessible, rather. It's accessible and becoming tangible because it's the simple things. And your success then becomes your loved ones, how you treat other people more than anything. That's the definition of success to me, is how people talk about you behind your back. People are always going to talk about you, right? Are they saying positive things? He's all right. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. Or are they saying, what an asshole? God damn, this guy could just shut up. Just shut up. I don't want to hear you talk. Is that what you want your impression to be? I wouldn't. But you can't control that. So with this Tom Platz idea that you have to achieve failure, spiritual growth is no different than physical growth in muscular development, where you tear the fibers, you push yourself past a limit but then you take the pause to repair. You take the pause to reflect. You got to have rest days if you're going to gain muscle. You have to have rest days if you're going to let the spiritual lessons that you've gained become part of your ether, your essence, your being. It's like there's a rabbinical teaching that when they're praying and when they're in school, they place whatever prayer book they're using at the time, Old Testament. If it's rabbinical, that's Judaism. But you place it on your heart while you're studying, because when your heart breaks, then the lessons can fall in. That's worth considering. Just listen. So with my friend, I think in a sense, I've failed more than anyone I know, depending on how you gauge it. Right? I had to declare bankruptcy. I've got into credit card debt twice, where I had to take personal loans to get back out after the bankruptcy. What an idiot. Figure it out. Stop buying stuff you can't afford, dum-dum. Well, sometimes you got to flog yourself to get those lessons, because most of these failures are self-inflicted. But it's also a subconscious motivation to forge your own strength. Iron sharpens iron. So if you create an iron mindset, you're going to recreate that. It's going to become regenerative in the idea that it can only get stronger. The thickness of the steel plates can only get wider and more rigid and harder to break again. But I've also had a failed marriage. I've had habitual consistency in taking action that only results in stress and anxiety. And all I had to do was pause for 5 seconds or just not say that. My foot in the mouth disease is chronic. That's probably what people say behind my back. Boy, guy doesn't have much of a filter. Put a filter. You don't need to be so take it or leave it that you don't have a filter, because then you're not being kind. You're not treating other people how you want to be treated, because if you're just saying whatever you want, depends on your dynamic with that person. If they are a close enough friend, you can be like, bro, what are you listening? Do you hear yourself when you talk? Or do you just say words and hope that they go somewhere useful? Or one I like to use is someone who's in a confused space and they're like answering their own question, but they're not realizing it. And be like, well, tell your face. Because it's clear. If they were talking to themselves in the mirror, they'd be like, oh, that is not a good idea. Or that's not worth pursuing. Or whatever it might be. But I've heard this quote before that wasn't, there's a few quotes, right? We got the success is a sculpture, the dull chisel, we got the achieve, you have to achieve failure. But also, failure is not a tombstone, it's a trail marker. It's part of your path. The failures that you encounter are guardrails that put you back on what you're supposed to be doing, on the trajectory of what you want to do with your life, of figuring out what you want to do with your life, figuring out what you shouldn't do with your life. And sometimes those guardrails are way past the dirt. You gotta drive, put the dirt through the grass, maybe over a couple rocks. Oh, there's the guardrail. Ooh, bring it back, bring it back. Sometimes they're right there. Sometimes you have to drive through them, drive off a cliff, and climb back up. But it all has a purpose. It all has its own motivation that can't always be seen. So what you do is not give up. You find the courage to not discourage yourself and regain strength to take that chance again. Maybe the same chance. Maybe you just needed to approach it a different way, a little slower, a little more realistically, rationally. Or maybe it just wasn't the right idea. Find the new idea. This is what that should have been. Those are things we have to figure out ourselves. I can't give you the answer. No YouTube video is going to give you the answer. No book's going to give you the answer. It might help. It'll probably help. So I've only felt like I've felt like a failure more in not doing the things that I want in reading, particularly learning, constantly expanding my consciousness. I let my foot off the gas on that. I feel like I'm not using my time productively. I'm wasting that hour or two, whatever it might be, on something unproductive. And that's going to make you feel like a failure. If you're not producing, that's a failure. But also, you have to not be producing all the time. That's not what people are supposed to do. That's what we're being taught, that after your job, you go to your side hustle, and then that side hustle has a side hustle. And then you have to have income coming in all the time, or your outcome is going to be failure. No, it's not. No, it's going to be exhaustion. And then that'll be its own failure because you couldn't keep going with the things that you wanted to keep going with. There's lifestyle adjustments. If you're defining success as a financial concept, that make that much more attainable. You don't need a Louis Vuitton bag. You don't need a Mercedes. You don't need any of this stuff. You don't need a Rolex. You don't need a Tag Heuer. You don't need a Omega. You don't need whatever these things are that people think signal their identities to society through materials is a direct path to failure. It's a direct path to feeling like a failure. It's nice. Again, said it last episode. It's nice to have nice things. Maybe the one before that. Check them out. But it's how you define success is worth reflecting on. We're going to make this one a little quicker today. That'll be the end of that. But I also wrote a book. It's going to be a link in the description. It's called Buddha Wusa, How to Weave Buddhist Principles into Dealing with Everyday Stupidity. Very proud of it. One of my biggest accomplishments. I felt like a failure holding on to that energy and information that had been swirling in my mind for the better part of a decade, probably a little longer, most of my life, to be perfectly honest, and finally gave it life. So it means a lot to me. And that's it. Get your definition of failure in order. And then you will find yourself on the path to success. Have a good night.